most lifters and athletes never really get to the point where they understand intensity and volume and the inverse relationship of those two. And they continuously try to drive up volume and intensity at the same time. And it basically just creates fatigue and a lack of progression that is very, very frustrating from the standpoint of any lifter, right? So volume is essentially the amount of work we do. Intensity is basically the difficulty of that work, right? So you can look at intensity from the standpoint of a maximal performance, whether that be highest sprint capacity we can attain, 1 rep max, distance ran, right? Those things are ways to start to understand intensity. Like, hey, that was the fastest mile I can perform, right? That was the highest squat I can attain, right? And then volume is the amount of work we try to do at varying levels of intensity. And essentially it comes down to this. If you try to do more volume and intensity than you are capable of adapting to, you're going to get a lot of feedback from your body in the form of a lack of progression, pain, injuries, and just overall, like, you're not going to get the desired effect of your training. And the reason that a lot of people struggle with this is we tend to gravitate towards doing more volume than we probably need to progress, because often we just have like imposter syndrome or some form of anxiety about not doing enough to make progress. And let's be really honest here. Like, there's no perfect, like, this is the exact plan that we can move forward through without any modifications of those things. Like, people want it to be a really neat and stepwise process, when in fact it's more of just continuously running an experiment. When in doubt, it's typically better for people to err on the side of a little bit less volume and actually pushing themselves appropriately intensely to actually like drive the stimulus you want, right? So when it comes to like strength training, a lot of people will develop like a 4 sets of 10 type of mentality, right? It's high volume, relatively speaking, and they maybe are hitting 60 or 70% for those sets of 10. Like, they can definitely work, but that amount of volume may not drive the adaptations and strength that we want. And a lot of times people just end up kind of not putting forth good effort into the workout because they're just trying to get through it. And again, a lot of things can work. So you don't want to like lose hope in what you're doing, but when in doubt, like in the gym, doing a couple sets where you're leaving 1, 2, or 3 reps in the tank is often just more advantageous to just keep the ball rolling than doing 5 sets of 5 at like, trying to essentially like push those up from week to week. Both strategies can work really well. I would even say like 5 sets of 5 maybe is a like not a bad overarching structure in general, but like 5 sets of 10, 50 reps, it just often just ends up beating people up. And from a how many days a week standpoint you're training, like a lot of people think they need to be in the gym 4 to 6 times a week and doing high volume when they're in the gym. And that inevitably also like leads to problems, right? So remembering that if you're going to train frequently and if you're going to like you enjoy being in the gym on a regular basis, you might want to back down on the volume you hit in any given session. If you really like to have high volume oriented training, you just have to manage the intensity well. And when in doubt, like intensity is probably going to be the biggest driver for a lot of us, meaning hitting challenging work with a few sets in reserve with less overall volume so that we can actually adapt to what we're doing and not just accumulate a ton of fatigue. So if you're a newer trainee or an intermediate trainee, and even if you're relatively experienced, a lot of the things that seem to work in the beginning, which is often higher volume, because we're not actually pushing very much intensity. We're not pushing close to our like potential. Over time, you may need to just back off a little bit on the amount of volume you're hitting. If you like to train a lot and you have the ability to eat, sleep, and just really put a lot of energy into training, this is not to say that you can't push up your volume. And during phases, you need to push up your volume in combination with intensity. The two variables are always kind of changing. But where most people go wrong and what ultimately sabotages them is they're trying to do too much work at too high of intensities. They're not balancing things very well, and it ends up to just be a big problem for their training, and it increases pain and just doesn't give them the benefit that they want. So manage volume and intensity. That's all I got for today. Peace.